Okay, so what we're going to talk about this morning is the ocean of bliss. In any kind of endeavor to understand how nature works, how we work in spiritual practice, there's two fundamental approaches. Well, okay, there's an infinite number of fundamental approaches from which I will select two. One of them is to talk about it, or represent it, or model it, or communicate it in language and symbol and things like that. The other, which is my fave, is to that light doesn't work very good. Okay, the other one, which is my favorite, is to experience it as directly as possible. And so that's why I'm interested and enjoy specific practices. The point of the practices, simple: be there rather than talk about being there. So what I'm going to describe is bliss, Shakti, how Shakti works, and how you feel it in different ways. So when you take a look at models of the subtle body, you have the standard thing that is most commonly known is all the chakras. And chakras are wheels, and they're wheels of energy. And because they say they're wheels, a lot of people get the idea that they're spinning and stuff like that. But it's, wouldn't you know it, nature is always a little bit more complicated than our imagination, isn't it? Or elegant. I'll say elegant. It's more elegant than our imagination. Okay, so we talk about the chakras and the nadis, the filaments of light that are in our body. And we talk about energy bodies and feeling energy, like energy between the hands, or in like Tai Chi movements where one hand is pushing the other, even though they're not touching. When we talk about the body of light, which is actually my preferred term, the reason why is that when we see this, or when we perceive it, even though we don't see it with our eyes in particular, because we see it with our whole being, we often represent it as a kind of light. And the it here is Shakti. Now, Shakti is often the feminine energy, or femininity, or female in general. It's represented like in Shiva and Shakti, where we have the prototypical male, the prototypical female. And it's easy to get lost in the dichotomy there. It's easy to get lost in the distinction between the two, which is the core of the problem in talking about things in an intellectual way. However, there's got to be some way that we can communicate this stuff. So, having run out of other options, I'll use words. Now then, when we talk about this, we talk about different layers of the subtle body. We talk about energy, like in Jyotish, as an example, and in astrology, about the energy patterns influencing us when we're born and throughout the course of our lives. When we talk about Vastu, what we're talking about is the energy of the earth and the way that it flows north to south, and the energy of the sun and the way that it shifts all the energy patterns during the course of the day, the energy of the moon and how that shifts the course of the patterns, and of course all the different planets. So what we're doing here is, and it becomes pretty clear, there's many points that we're trying to represent, and we're looking at the points. We're looking at the material world, and if you balance the percentage of gravitational attraction in the universe, the material world is 4%. Dark energy and dark matter are the rest. So in a real sense, we are, we're kind of like the bull going after the cape instead of the matador, or going into a restaurant and eating the menu instead of the dinner, because the representation isn't the thing that it's trying to represent. The finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. So there is the problem with going through things in an intellectual manner. And inevitably, you'll come to the point of self-defeat, which of course is that's the whole goal, right? That's the whole goal. But when you come to the point of intellectual self-defeat, what happens is your representation takes a backseat. Your ideas, being right or wrong, saying which color's in which chakra, um, all the different things that people talk about when they're talking about energy and dealing with spirits. And by the way, spirits are a real thing. I can get into that on another occasion. Um, but the various things that we talk about that we experience that we call in the realm of spirit or in the realm of the spiritual. So the realm of the spiritual is some significant portion of the other 96%. Now, a fundamental premise that I have is that our being, in part our senses, in part our intellect, uh, in part the way that we receive and send signals through the subtle body, as well as through vision and taste and all the rest of this, we have an absolutely profound instrument in our being. We have this profound instrument to experience the world in an incredibly beautiful way. Because of this, even though I've studied under many teachers, and some of them are, very powerful teachers with beautiful inspiration and things like that. And the final analysis, all the books, all the tantras, all the symbols, all the words are simply representations. We use them to get to the point where we can have our own experience. And so one of the primary things involved in Tantra, in tantric practice, is how do we refine that ability to experience so that we are not self-deceptives? Because it's important. When you start doing these practices, the breath techniques, the energy techniques, working with the body of light, all these kinds of things, from India, China, Tibet, and actually anywhere in the world. All of these things, when we're working with these things, it's so easy to get caught up with the thing or the tool, the activity that's creating what we want, and we forget to pay attention to the result. The result is bliss. Why bliss? Well, it's kind of like when you fall in love, there's kind of this sort of buzzing excitement that you feel. When you see that person, your heart accelerates, the serotonin levels start jumping around, dopamine, etc. All the biochemical stuff. But that is the smaller form. When you fall in love with the world, the love becomes bigger than anything that you could possibly imagine. And it feels a little different. It is not this nervous excitement, but it's this flood of quiet vibration. And it feels like love. It feels like bliss, but it's not limited to the body. It's not limited to the mind. It's not limited even to our body of light. What we feel, and we experience it in this way, is that the whole world is glowing from within. And what we feel, and the best words that I've come up with recently is this: we feel aliveness. And this aliveness that we feel is not our personal aliveness. My identity is Kirby. This body is, is the composite that identity is driving around the world. But the life itself, the foundation, the basic aliveness within me permeates the whole world. We can feel this. We can experience this in a direct way. That's why it's worth going to the trouble. Do the practices. If you got to sit with your back to a tree for 5 days and fast or whatever it is that you need to do, once you start tasting this, once this becomes a regular experience in your life, you'll never be alone again. You can't be alone. You can't be alone because you don't own the aliveness that's animating your body. It's not your property. But there is a greater aliveness that connects everything that you belong to. A favorite phrase of mine is I overuse this, but I'm just going to do it again. There is a rainbow bridge of hearts from the mountains to the sea, connecting every living thing. That is literal. It is real. It is here all the time. We're just beginning to notice it. We're just beginning to understand how this works in an experiential rather than an intellectual way. Now, if we go back into some of the ancient tantras and some of the other documents from the past, we find that there were times when people seemed to have a better and deeper understanding and way to experience this. It appears that we've been going through a rather long time of just being reduced to paying attention to the physical world, that 4% that I was talking about. And now that we are in a time that is rising in its energy and its light and our ability to perceive and all of this, now is the time to start tasting this wine. Now is the time to start feeling this in a particular and beautiful way. So what am I saying overall as far as teachings and things like that are concerned? I'll tell you this. The teachings have gone, even though they were in a time of deep understanding a very long time ago. And current calculations, well, I'm not going to get in. I'm going to have to do another one on the yugas, the whole cycle of time and all that. But not today. Not today. Okay, so we've gone through a period of centuries of darkness. And what is the darkness? Where we don't see the light within that 4%. Within that 4% of the universe that is your body and my body, that is the planet we're on, and there are cars and dogs and stars and all the rest of that. That's 4%. We're starting to see the rest. And we're coming into a time where around the turn of the 19th into the 20th centuries, we start noticing, there's these things called radio waves, there's electricity. We're starting to see the atom. In the 1930s, we realized that an atom is not a speck of sand suspended in space, so to speak. It's actually the arising from a resonant structure of, let's just say, dark matter, dark energy for now. The arising from resonant structures within that, so that part of that 4% is kind of like it precipitates out of a solution. When you're in chemistry, you can put a little bit more of something in a solution and you keep stirring, and it's not there. And then you get to the point where things start dropping out of it. Okay, that is the atom. That is our phenomenal world. And let's pay attention to that, because that's a starting point for our perception, because we're used to it and we're coming out of a time of darkness. And let's pay attention to the rest and whatever practices we can use. For me in particular, breath practices are very good. Dream work is good. And something that, because of Tantra, a lot of people associate that with sexuality and pairing and having spiritual relationships and that kind of thing. What I've got to say is, despite what all the tantric teachers say, Tantra is about sex, but not the way we think it is. It's about sex in that these differences that we perceive in the world, our instruction is to unite them. Our perception is united with the arising of Shakti, of life force. And that is how our world is created as a living thing. So that is the ocean of bliss. And that is what it feels like. It feels like our body of light, we can feel it. We can feel the threads of connection with the living things around us. It feels like when we think of someone, they'll notice it wherever they happen to be. This is the place where we belong. This is our home. And all the schools and all the religions and all the gurus and teachers are simply messengers. Nature is our guide. Thank you for your time.